But I've got three individuals to introduce to you. It's almost like they're in the green room this morning, so that's kind of funny. Come on over. Rebecca Morehead, step right on up. Rebecca Morehead is practice manager strategist. So nice to have you here with us. With over 20 years of experience in medical practice management, EMR implementation, MSO business management, medical billing, and meaningful use support, Ms. Morehead is certified as a HIPAA security expert and helps medical practices with security risk assessments, workflow changes for new and existing EMR technology, customizing their HIPAA security compliance manuals, conducting HIPAA workforce training for their offices, and many other EHR workflow support services. She's founder of Practice Manager Solutions and a host of a radio program called More for Your Practice, which offers practice managers solid ideas for navigating management of their busy medical practices. I just tuned in yesterday. That was a great presentation, and in fact, Eric was your interviewer. She's actively educating providers and practices on revenue-generating ideas to help their businesses thrive in this ever-changing healthcare economy. Rebecca's mission is to provide independent practices with more ideas, more resources, and especially more support to enable their growth and success in today's healthcare business. Would you please give a warm welcome to Rebecca Morehead? Thank you, Rebecca. Reney DuBose. Reney, come on up here. He's an experienced licensed credit attorney and one of the co-founders of A&C Consultants. Good morning. His company is dedicated to helping doctors and dentists and other medical professionals to optimize their credit scores for equipment financing to grow their practices. Reney is also co-developer of a credit information portal designed to map out the credit reporting industry and provide articles, resources, videos, and tutorials to help individuals to better understand the credit laws and credit reporting process. Now, he and his wife, Marty, are co-authors of the book entitled A Guide to Legal Credit Improvement, What the Big Three Credit Bureaus Don't Want You to Know, written to help inform consumers of how to exercise their rights under the credit laws to legally improve their credit. Would you please give a warm welcome to Reney DuBose. Monika Nagy, come on up here. Welcome, Monika. Monika is a former professor, but currently she's a certified credit analyst. Gives counsel on how to optimize doctors' personal and business credit to achieve the maximum borrowing power. She's written many books and has become one of the most recognized credit experts in the country, dedicated to helping physicians. Medical and dental practice credit development is a must for doctors. It's important for doctors to realize that credit for their practice is separate from their personal credit, allowing doctors to acquire loans for their practice without personal guarantees. As a result, they can avoid the personal liability for credit obligations of the practice. Any doctor will tell you that's what they want when you're buying equipment. Monika will share valuable information about the requirements to create business credit and how to improve your personal credit to get business loans with the best interest rates. Welcome, Monika. Please give her a warm welcome. And Rebecca, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I'm kind of a light speaker, and I'm going to talk slow because us Southern people say it once so you can get it. No, I'm just joking. So I'm going to start us off today talking about will the independent practice be able to weather the perfect storm? And there are circumstances that are brewing to bring up the perfect storm. And actually, I wanted to thank Chuck and the MOROF community for allowing me to come talk with you today. This is an honor and a pleasure, and I thank you. And I actually interviewed Eric on the radio show yesterday, so we've had several conversations about this very topic, and I feel like I have a comrade in the way of our industry that actually believes the way that I do, that there is a perfect storm brewing, and we want to just talk about that a little bit today. So first I want to ask you a question. Did any of you see the movie The Perfect Storm? Does anyone remember that? It was a few years back. George Clooney and some other guys. And when I think about that movie, and you know how you remember things, our minds are beautiful things where we remember things in pictures. Or some of us remember a song and it brings us back to an event. When I think about that movie, and I want you to think about that movie for just a minute, those of you that saw it or heard about it, it was a true story, actually. When you think about that movie, when I think about it, I think about the decisions that were made, the things that led up to what happened. And then I think about, my mind remembers that tsunami of a wave. You remember what I'm talking about when they've made that decision to move forward and continue fishing because they're into the fish and they're going to keep going, and that tsunami, and they're looking at it and they realize they've made a bad decision and there's no turning back. And I think that I'm going to sound a little bit like Chicken Little today, announcing that the sky is falling, but it's somewhat of a truth or a realism. The perfect storm is an expression that describes an event where a rare combination of circumstances will aggravate a situation drastically. So that's what we're going to talk about, some of the circumstances that are going to be affecting practices that are going to aggravate the situation just enough to bring the house down, if you know what I mean. So some of those perfect combination of circumstances. So number one, we've got meaningful use measures changing from stage 1 to stage 2 over this period now and 2016. Now what we're understanding is that many of the vendors are not yet prepared for stage 2. The last I checked, it was under 100 of the thousands of EHR, and I see some head shaking, of the thousands of vendors out there that have EHR systems that have not yet certified them for stage 2. Now, what does that mean for a practice? And I want you to be thinking, if you're not a practice here today, but you're a service to a practice, or you provide consulting services or vendor services to a practice, be thinking about how this perfect storm is going to be affecting you. Because if the practice is affected, you're affected. And meaningful use, moving from stage 1 to stage 2, what we're going to realize is that implementing patient portals and communicating electronically amongst providers is going to be quite an undertaking. And although there's a reprieve to 2016, some of the things that are coming, practices are not ready for. My mission and vision is to help independent practices, and they're calling me on a daily basis. And stage 1, they're struggling with, what do you think stage 2 is going to do? PQRS. We all know that PQRS is an animal that is rearing its head, and we're going to be seeing some penalties and incentive delays with PQRS. And what I mean by that is the combination of stage 2 clinical quality measures, and I'm not going to get too technical here with you today, but combining those measures and reporting, some of the electronic health vendors are going to be direct submitters of PQRS. Are you familiar with that? Direct submission. In submitting directly, what we're going to see is that when we combine the stage 2 clinical quality measures with PQRS and we want to roll all that up and submit it directly, what we're going to find is PQRS is measured in yearly increments. Stage 2 meaningful use we're doing in a 90-day increment. So providers are looking at possibly waiting a whole year to get their attestation funds for meaningful use. So that's something to be very careful with. One of the other combinations that we're looking at in this perfect storm that's brewing is security risk compliance. The omnibus rule gave us a year to get our compliance plans together, and I think what we're going to be seeing, especially in my world, is a compliance crisis. So we know now that 30% of a practice manager or administrator's job is now wrapped up in compliance. So where they were doing a lot before, they're doing 30% now just on compliance. And I believe when we talk about ICD-10, this is the misnomer. This is the perfect storm in itself. ICD-10 training and implementation is not the biggest factor here. A lot of practices and vendors alike are saying, we've got this handled. But your CMS is sending out notification that we're looking at 6 months in delays in claims. This is not going to happen like we're being told it's going to happen. And Eric and I discussed this yesterday, and this in itself is the culprit that's really going to jerk the rug out underneath of all of us. It's going to push the providers to have some reserves on hand, to have something in place to offset all the challenges that are happening with ICD-10. We know that letters have gone out to providers from certain insurance carriers telling them that expect delays. There are going to be delays. And with that kind of excuse, there needs to be a cash fund or a till or something that we can dip into to make payroll and the other expenses to stay afloat. Now, the other thing I want to bring up are the audits. The Office of Civil Rights announced there's going to be 1,200 audits this year. So as if we weren't dealing with enough, now they're going to slap some audits. And actually, you know, that's expected with all of the change and the compliance that's happening. But this is the year for all of this to brew. Now, what we're seeing in the audit results there are a lack of security risk assessments, so those haven't been performed. This is costly for practices. I don't know if you've even looked at this or considered how costly this is for them to become compliant. And those not being performed are what's causing having to pay for the corrective action, if you will. So if you're caught and you haven't performed your security risk assessment, well, you don't get a slap on the hand, you do, but then you have to go make the corrective action. There's a lack of documentation, so we know policies and procedures and processes are known. Practices know how they do things, but they're just not documented. And that's a really task to undertake. We also know that workforce training being a requirement is not happening, and so that has to happen as well. So this is a taxing event that has to take place, a requirement, but yet the practices have to foot the bill for that. Now, it wouldn't be fair for me to talk about all the things coming down without some reprieve or some choices for providers. So I want to just mention a few things that especially Eric and I were talking about yesterday, is that growing the business and building the business up, whether the practice wants to sustain the storm that's coming or they want to sell the business and move on. I mean, I hear this a lot from practices. I just heard it last week from a doctor in the Villages saying, we're just going to sell. We're gonna move on. This is not what we signed up for. There's some choices to join forces, maybe large groups, or build a multi-specialty group, or join a multi-specialty group. Aligning with your ACOs is another option. Building up the profitability, like revisiting your contracts and renegotiating them. That is something that Eric is a genius at doing, and that's something that we highly recommend doing because the reimbursement rates could be negotiated at this time. This would be a great time to do that. Some of the other choices are to bring on cash-based businesses. And this is something that's a small wave, if you will, but it is growing. The practices back 500 years ago, you went to the doctor and the doctor had everything there. Here, take this. You remember? No, we don't. That was 500 years ago. But we know that the doctor had all the answers, and we're moving back to that, where the patients, 70% of patients interviewed have said, I really want my doctor to recommend what I should be taking. He has my record, he knows what I'm on, he knows my conditions, he knows me as a patient. I really want my doctor to recommend something. So bringing that back in-house and letting the doctor recommend the vitamins, the nutrients, what the patient should be taking, what's going to work for them, is a suggestion for cash-based business and bringing that in. And then next we have developing a line of credit, which is why I've asked Monika and Reney to come talk with you, because what I've learned recently just from them is there's quite a lot of practices believe, or providers believe, I'll just go take a line of credit out and I'll fund this whole thing and we'll ride this storm out with a line of credit. And I think there's some surprises in store with that. I'm going to let them talk about this, and I just want to say that whether we believe in the storm or whether you believe what's being predicted here today doesn't matter. As we know with the movie, it still happened, right? They still made choices and the storm still happened. And I just want to mention before I turn it over to Reney and Monika is that I've got a show coming up where I've interviewed Monika and Reney where we're going to talk about this more. And then there's a webinar in April where I'm talking about more revenue generating opportunities for practices. So just be aware as a vendor and a support to these practices that this is coming, and we want them to get paid so they can pay us, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Hi, everybody. First of all, you can hear in my accent I am from the South. I can say fantastically, y'all. But I was born in Europe. I came to the United States because I was accepted for my PhD program here. And before I even started the PhD program, I was offered to be a teacher at Valencia, and a few months later, a professor at UCF. So, stopping the PhD program, because I couldn't be in Arizona and in Orlando at the same time, I had to learn English in about 4 months to start to teach in a classroom in English. So I just want to let you know that that's where the accent is from. I speak 4 languages, so my accent is a little bit different, but I am hoping that you are going to understand me. This is one of my favorite slides. And that, sir, is, in simple terms, what you need to do to raise your credit score. Many people don't understand that credit is not that simple. You see that 600 some or 700 score, and the truth is there is an algorithm behind it. And we are going to talk today about a little bit about the algorithm. You don't need to know all the 7,000 plus components. Does that excite you? It excites me. So that's where we are going to be today, a little bit about the components. But first of all, a question. Please read it quickly. I am a teacher, it shows. And think about which one is the answer. Paying your bills on time every month generally does the following to your credit score. Increase it 20, 30 points. Increase it 10, 15 points. Increase it 5 or fewer points. Will not affect your credit score in any ways. Who? You say 5 or fewer points? 10, 15? Not affect your credit at all? The last one. This is a difficult point to understand. They want to do it so counterintuitive that you really cannot control your score unless you really understand how the process works. Next question. What is the best number of credit cards to have in order to maximize your credit score? 10, 15, 3, 5, 1, 3, or over 15? 3 to 5. Good job. Which of the following will generally increase your credit score? Pay off and cancel the highest interest rate credit card, increase and report a higher income to the credit bureaus, start to make payments on an old outstanding collection item, move to a more affluent zip code. Who is saying first? Second? Third? Fourth? Fourth. Pay off and cancel high interest rate credit cards is going to take points away from you. Increase and report a higher income. They don't care about your income. It's not part of the algorithm. Start to make payments on an old outstanding collection item. There is a high probability that they are going to change the date of the last activity and you are going to lose points instead of starting to gain points. Moving to a zip code, that's the one. Who is replying to your dispute letter? An American employee, an employee in India or in the Philippines, a computer answers, or an attorney? Who says an American employee? Employee in India and Philippines? Computer answers? An attorney? Okay, a computer answers. The majority of the things what you are sending them, it means you write a 2-page letter, the computer reads it and gives you one code for it. So, what are the credit requirements of the loan for your practice in 2014? A higher personal credit score, what you really need, and an almost perfect business credit these days. Now, many of you, I think, depend from the doctors, really their businesses to survive. Am I right? Okay, so this one is one of the things what the doctors are facing these days. Now, when is an optimization needed? When the doctor wants to have stability to get a loan at any time, in some cases in 48 hours. When the doctor wants to protect her business from personal tragedies, divorce. Did you notice that there are a very high level of divorce rates these days? Tax liens, short sales, spouse spending habits. I am a woman, so I didn't tell wife. I put spouse. When the doctor's credit card limits are lowered or when their credit cards are closed, even though they had a credit score above 750, I had clients whose 800 credit score was lowered 120, 130 points, and they didn't do anything wrong. So keep that in mind. Dentists who had too many inquiries. The FICO system is an idiot savant. I love that because it's an arithmetic algorithm of the information on your credit report that represents your credit risk. Although it adds and subtracts faster than you or I ever will, it can't think, reason, or analyze. It gives you a number, and many times that number is wrong. All credit risk scoring models rely on assumption. Depending, for example, where you live and what your neighbors do, sometimes you will see the geocode takes away or gives you points. The FICO credit algorithm, this is what I told you, what excites me. 10 main scorecards, 24 variables, 300 components. Yes! I love to find the little one what nobody finds. Examples of counterintuitiveness. I love English. Paying off collections will not create a dramatic increase. Closing credit cards can ruin your credit. Don't close it. Not using credit frequently lowers your score. Using your gas card close to the limit can create a big loss of credit scores. What many do not know is there are many undetected score enhancers or destroyers which are hidden from the untrained eye. The deletion of a negative item does not always create a positive score change. What is the difference between optimizing versus credit repair? We are optimizing credit. Reney is a credit attorney. I am a certified credit analyst. I spend time with the algorithm. A credit repair company who you see sometimes advertising on the corner, they do not have master's degrees. They are not doctors. They just shoot in the dark and they say it's not yours. The truth is that you gain sometimes more points by reorganizing the accounts, analyzing credit, change the reporting, even positive items. I have a doctor right now. She has 8 Celia Myers loans, but they were coded as the cash for check in the corner where you take your cash and you get check, because the person who coded in the government didn't know the coding system, pushed the wrong button. Her credit score is in the low 600s and she didn't do anything wrong. Know well when not to touch the item and educate the client. That's the most important thing what we do. Educate the doctors to survive. Important credit optimization facts. And I am going to go a little bit fast on this one because I want you to see a lot of things to understand what is coming, what Rebecca was mentioning. 25% may contain errors that can result in the denial of access to credit. This is from the Federal Reserve Bulletin. Out of every 4 person, 1 is denied wrongfully. 79% of credit reports may contain some type of errors. Federal Reserve Bulletin also. This can be 20 to 150 points of a difference. Inaccurate credit score sites. Now, I listed a lot of them. There are about 100 more. The truth is, none of them give you the FICO score. They are algorithms created by those companies. 20, 30 points what they are checking, but they are not checking the 300 what is on your scorecard. So when you are buying and paying money for a credit score, you are paying a score what is not your score. What is a score what they are creating for you, you can follow up and down, so that's their service, but at the same time is not the score what you are going to get when you go to a banker or when you are buying your car. So look for always for the FICO score, FICO, FICO score. Credit myth. After a bankruptcy, I will not have credit for 7 years. Between you and me, clients have 680 in about 6 to 8 months after a bankruptcy. FICO scores change very slowly. I can assure you that while we are sitting here, about 1/3 of your score have changed. Because scores change all the time, very quickly. I did not have, if I do everything right, I do not have to check my report. These days, you have to check your report, no matter what. There are so many changes in the banking system. There are so many things what hitting you which you don't know about. Please check your report. Annualcreditreport.com, free. For 1 year on 3 bureaus. I did not have too many loans, so I have great credit. Less you show that you can pay your loans back, lower your score is. If I pay a collection, my score will increase. We discussed that there is not always the case. Settling or consolidating that will increase my score. The word settle scores as bad as bankruptcy. As soon as it enters to your credit, so when somebody has a 500 debt to pay back and they negotiate to 300 and they start to pay much higher interest rate for the next 2-3 years, for me it doesn't make any sense. So be very careful. The divorce decree made my spouse pay it. The truth is that when you signed a contract, you signed it. And the divorce decree is not going to change it. There are 2 types of inquiries, hard inquiry and soft inquiry. Hard inquiry when they are running your credit banks or the car dealers. Soft inquiry when you are running your own credit and you can do it as many times as you want to, and please do it. Important facts of the FCRA, and this is very important. Many people are going to tell you that it's illegal to take off negative information from the credit report. The truth is not. The information must be 100% accurate, and the information must be 100% verifiable. So if the information is not accurate or not verifiable, in that case, you can remove it. And this is where we come in, we look at it, and we find mistakes. So, also one more thing, some of the items pass the reporting time, so keep that in mind. Irreparable damages can be created by debt settlement, which we mentioned already, and not using the miracle of rehabilitation. Many doctors don't know about rehabilitation. They just refinance the loan without rehabilitating, so that damaging their credit. How is the dispute process? Like I said, the computer only interested if that account shows up on your furniture computer. The computer does not look for accuracy. They use 4 or 5 codes. And there are 100 in the computer, which we know, but the majority of the public don't know more about than 4 or 5. The most common codes, not his or hers, account status, history wrong, inaccurate info, or wrong amount. That's it. And there are many others. What your divorce attorney will not tell you, the divorce decree divides the assets and spells out the obligations, but does not relieve you from the financial obligations. If you are on any joint account with your former spouse, have them all paid from the assets in full before finalizing the divorce. The majority of joint accounts are not paid after the divorce by either spouse, creating a financial disaster for both destroying practices. Important facts to know about disputes: never dispute online. You know very well that online the law didn't catch up yet. When you dispute online, you have half of the rights or 1/3 of the rights what you have in writing with a certified letter. Your dispute letter is read by computers, which we mentioned already. Avoid disputing the same item several times. They mark it frivolous if you do it. So you have to know how to change a little bit the verbiage to get a different code every single time. Newer the item, less chance you get to delete it without full payment. Do not pay unfamiliar old bills with bully collection companies. If they call you and tell you that you owe $30 or $100 and you are just, let me pay you because let's forget about it, watch out, because there are collection companies now calling without really you owing anything to them, or maybe a bill from the 1980s. Never give your bank information to collection. How do the Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and Corporation make money on bad credit scores? The truth is that they get consumers to pay for their real report and score. You are paying $20, $60 for a credit score. They make money on identity theft services, and low scoring credit files bring more money. Why? You pay more interest rate. Their real consumer is the bank and many of the other financial institutions. This is a score increase, a normal score increase, like you can see in 3 months. And this is a scorecard change. When you move from scorecard to scorecard, sometimes you can have a hike of huge amount of points in a very short period of time, and sometimes I can move you from scorecard to scorecard by knowing the rules. How doctors ruin their scores? They have too many inquiries, and the truth is they apply over and over again without analyzing the problem. So doctors need to know the specific requirements before they apply. How to protect your and your spouse's credit and save the practice? Your spouse is also safer if both of you have separate credit profile. In this case, if you guys are married, look at both sides. Whatever happens, if there is a death, you want your spouse to be free from closing credit cards and problems. So keep that in mind. And the practice is more protected if it is tied to only the business credit. Oh, I love this one. Behavior score. How many of you knew that there is a behavior score? Okay. Whatever you do with your credit card, you know very well that it's going to be recorded. They analyze it. So, giving you an example, you like organic food, like I do. You decide that you are choosing to change from Whole Foods to Walmart, new gorgeous places I don't know if you have seen in Winter Springs, there is one, which is a Walmart food store, and you are going there to get some of your organic food. You are paying with your credit card. They analyze, why did you change? Why do you have to pay less for the same items? So because of that, your behavior score can be lowered. And if your behavior score is lowered, the doctor doesn't get sometimes the loan. Behavior score, don't parachute. And for men, certain places do not pay with your credit card. Watch out when a restaurant and the bar maybe is in the same space and you are paying, and maybe the restaurant is coded as a bar instead of, so you are going there to eat dinner. I had one doctor, who mentioned that he was going and eat dinner there every single night because he was a single man. So be very careful with that. Don't parachute. But mountain biking is fine. Join a health club, you gain some points. And read the Wall Street Journal. Attrition-risk score, I go over very quickly. It's really predicting how much do you use your account. So be aware that there are about 15, 20 scoring elements outside of the FICO score, which is looking at your behavior. Very important, you should never tell lies. So if you go to a credit agency in the corner who is doing credit repair, sometimes they tell you, just say it's not yours. Be very careful, they can come after you. It's better to fight technicalities. You should understand that the complexity of the credit is much higher than many people understand it. So do not give expert advice after this one. You should understand the laws of the credit and outside of the credit, like for example HIPAA, before you do anything. I have to speed up a little bit here. So, who needs optimization? You should optimize once a year. If you go to your doctor to have a normal checkup, or you go to your dentist to have a normal checkup, you should have a checkup of your credit. You need a credit attorney or a certified credit analyst. We can help you to raise your score. We can give you advice what nobody else can. Here are some of the doctors, what they said. I was referred to them by a Fortune 500 company. By the way, we are the credit analyst and credit attorney for a Fortune 500 company who does more than $8 billion of sales, and we are working in 50 states. So as Dr. Arena said, within 90-day period, she was able to get over 100-point increase on my credit score and an approved loan. And she's telling nice things about me. I get embarrassed always reading this. Monika's professionalism and expertise, education, knowledge, and caring attitude is essential in today's difficult financial climate. I care. I really do care about my clients, and I try to do my best. This is Evansing by the name. By the way, I am mentioning these names because none of them had bad credit. All of them had good credit. Dr. Vansing was moving from one state to another, but he needed in 90 days a home loan and a business loan. Dr. Robert Lacaruba, he has 5 practices and amazing credit. I have never worked with somebody who is so detail-orientated. What happened? He had an 800 plus credit. One of the credit companies decided that he was not making enough money for them, closed one account, the next credit company closed the account, the next credit company closed the account, and his credit was like a tsunami falling. So the credit reporting industry has changed and is changing dramatically. What worked in the past may not work in today's market, and what works today may not work tomorrow. We are staying on top of it. And just one more thing. I was recognized by Maria Shriver, who is the First Lady of California and, like you know, a Kennedy family member, and I'm kind of proud of that. So I was crying when I got that letter. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to segue, and Reney's going to be up next. Hope you're all thinking about your credit scores at this time and what you can personally do.
I'm Reney DuBose, and as Chuck and Monika and Rebecca mentioned, I'm an attorney, but please do not hold that against me. You know, the interesting thing about going last is all the good stuff's always taken. You know, Monika went over a lot of things. She's a professor, so she's very thorough. I really wanted to talk about that behavior score one, but that's okay. We'll move on. I want to start with some business facts about business credit. 74% of the businesses fail within the first 4 years. Is that surprising to any of you? And probably not surprising because you see a lot of companies going out of business, right? And this is from the SBA. The major reason for small business failure is insufficient capital and inadequate financing. Now, Rebecca talked a lot about the perfect storm. She talked about what's coming and the need to have capital. It is so critical. I cannot overemphasize how important it is right now to be in a position, even as a provider, but especially as a doctor, as we move forward. It's really important that they have the lines of credit set up and in place. 89% of business loan applications are denied. Now, understanding the importance of capital and credit to be successful as a business, it is very surprising that 89 to 90% of the business loan applications are denied. Why do you think that's so? Why do you think that's such a high amount of business loan applications that are being denied? Any ideas? Any thoughts? Good point. Okay. They do it at the point of their lowest need or lowest availability. Any other thoughts as to why that's happening? Bingo. The answer was they don't know how to apply. That's a very important point. We're going to talk about that as we move forward. She has good students. Medical and dental practices are not exempt. So not only other businesses, but medical and dental practices, they're not exempt from those statistics. So what is business credit? Let's talk about that. Business credit is credit that's obtained in the name of the medical practice or the provider's company's name. With business credit, the practice itself or the business builds its own credit profile and credit score separate and independent from the doctor or from the business owners. So you're familiar with, as Monika just mentioned, about how as an individual you have credit scores, the FICO credit score she talked about, and how you have credit reports for the individual. Well, the same is true for a practice or a business. A business can have its own credit report and its own credit score. Think about IBM. Do you think that the president of IBM, when he goes in to get a loan on behalf of the company, has to sign a personal guarantee for IBM? No. He's able to get credit for IBM. Well, your practice or your company can do the same once you know how to apply. So with an established credit profile and a score, the practice can then qualify for credit on its own merit. And that's very important. That's what we want to really emphasize today. So here's one of the questions we're often asked by doctors and dentists and other medical professionals. Why do I have to have or need business credit for my practice if I have a good personal credit score? You would think that, well, I have a credit score of 750 and I'm able to go in and sign a personal guarantee. I'm able to get all the credit that I need. So why should my business have separate credit? Well, there's a few reasons for that. One is that the business credit is based upon the ability of the practice to pay, not the doctor. So given that, you can understand how higher credit limits would be granted for the practice as opposed to the individual doctor. So if the practice is grossing $1 million, the practice has access to higher credit limits than the doctor would have, who may be taking a salary of $250,000. So that's one reason. Another reason, and this is an important one for many doctors, what it does is it allows the doctor to preserve their personal credit for their personal needs. See, when they commingle the credit of their individual credit scores and credit reports with the practice, when they get ready to buy their home, the debt to income ratio for the payments of the credit for the practice gets included in that calculation so they can afford less home. When it's time to buy their car, they have the similar type of an issue. The third reason here is that some lenders actually evaluate both. And a lot of times when you apply for a business loan, you're not aware of that. So when we talk about not knowing how to apply, it's important that you have business credit and personal credit, because many lenders will look at both. You may have a 620 credit score on your personal, but if you have a high business credit score, it can compensate for the low personal credit score. And on balance, it help you to be in a position where you maybe can get that loan approved. Question number 3. Why is it important to separate the personal credit from the business credit? Well, one of the reasons is because it may eliminate the need for a personal guarantee. You know, I have a client that we worked with, and when I tell you the story, it's like something that, you know, Job went through in the Bible. She had twins, she got skin cancer, and her office flooded, all in the same year. Okay? Now, in the past, she had great credit. She's paid her bills on time. She did all the things that Monika talked about. She had very high credit scores. So she'd go into the bank, and the bank would look at her personal credit scores and say, no problem, we'll give you the loan that you need to buy your equipment. Just sign here, sign this personal guarantee, and life was good, right? Then life happened. And once life happened, she went 6 months with no income at all. And she had medical bills up here, and she had new additions to the family, on and on and on. So now she was in a position where her personal credit suffered. She didn't have enough income coming in. She ended up having to go through a short sale. Well, what happens is when the personal credit is tied to the practice, whatever happens in the personal life spills over into the practice. But guess what? It works the opposite as well, vice versa. There's a business owner that I've worked with who's doing $11 million a year. Some changes happened with the economy. A lot of the insurance A lot of his clients were in the auto industry and they had insurance. Well, the auto industry tanked. A lot of people went through unemployment. They no longer had insurance. They couldn't pay. His business went from 1 year from $11 million to $7 million. He had great personal credit, but he always signed with a personal guarantee. Well, when his business dropped from 11 to 7 million, they lowered his credit limits on his credit cards. And when they lowered the credit limits on the credit cards, as Monika just taught, the score drops. So his personal score dropped. Whereas previously he could go in and just sign a personal guarantee, get all the money he needed, he now can't do that. So one of the benefits is that you're in a position that you can have double the purchasing power, or you have options, so that if you have a problem on one side, you can recover by using the credit for the other. Now, here's a question. How do I establish business credit for my practice? So once you understand what business credit is, once you understand the importance of separating it from your personal credit, you now need to understand what is necessary to build business credit. And it starts with building a strong business foundation to comply with the lending requirements. I recently, last week, I had a meeting with one of the vice presidents at American Express. And we talked about what their lending requirements are to be able to get a corporate card, because they have a lot of nice products for small businesses. And American Express has a 38 data point loan approval process. What that means is when you submit that business application, behind the scenes, the underwriters who approve or reject the loan have 38 data points that they look at. This is where I was going to talk about the behavior, performance credit scores. But one of those is the behavior score, believe it or not. They actually look at where you shop. They look at your zip code, where you live. And they have 36 other points, personal credit being one of them, the dollar amount of the sales for your company. If you can get sales over 4 million, you can automatically eliminate the personal side. They have products where they just approve you purely based upon the business. If it's under $4 million in revenue and sales, then they're looking at the personal and they're looking at your business. But they kind of keep the 38 points close to their vest. They don't share a lot of that information. Well, what we've done is we have a team of business advisors and loan officers in our business as a part of our team. And these loan officers have worked at a number of financial institutions. So we have the lending requirements and guidelines for over 2,100 financial institutions. And we've incorporated that into our system. So when we work with our clients, we help them to put the credentials in place so that they can meet the lending requirements. Most lending institutions have about 20 data points. American Express is the premier in terms of getting approved for credit. So they have 38 data points. Once you get American Express, that actually helps with some of the other financial lending institutions. So we work with our clients to help them to meet those 20 data points to be in a position. It's sort of like before taking a test, you know the answers. So it makes it a lot easier. So we sort of pre-qualify them before they make an application. So you want to establish a business credit profile with all 3 credit bureaus and build new credit. Now, having credit for your personal is a little different than for the business. The 3 credit bureaus are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion on the personal side. Well, on the business side, the 3 credit bureaus are Experian, Smart Business Report, and Equifax, and Dun & Bradstreet. However, on the personal side, the way it generally works is you become of age, you go to college, and while you're in college, remember getting those pre-approved applications in the mail. They send you the card, and everyone runs and uses their card while they're in college. And as soon as you do that, you're building a credit profile. You start to build a credit score, and hopefully you pay them on time, and your scores increase. There's nothing that you had to do to establish a credit profile. However, for business credit, you have to make the effort to establish a credit profile, and unfortunately, it is not easy, okay? Especially with Equifax. Equifax is one of the most difficult to establish a credit profile with. So if you don't have a credit profile and you go to the bank or your financial institution to make a request for a business loan, one of the first things they do, remember I talked about those 20 data points, is they pull a business credit report. They look for your profile. If you haven't established it, it's not there. So now one of the data points, you got a red mark. Then they go to your personal only, because they don't have the business to try to help bolster the personal. So establishing a business profile is one of the most critical points. Dun & Bradstreet also, in addition to establishing a profile, they'll give you what's called a DUNS number, and many of you may receive the phone calls from them to invite you to go ahead and establish a DUNS number, and they also give you a rating. So this is an example of a business credit score. This is the DUNS rating. It's called a Paydex score. So for businesses, you set up the profile, you establish accounts. Once you establish the accounts and you make timely payments, they start rating your credit worthiness as a company. And so these are the distribution of points based upon timely payments. Now there's really about 6 steps that we walk you through as a business owner or as a doctor to be in a position to establish the foundation so that the company or the practice is set up where it's credible to meet the lending requirements that we talked about. But then there's other steps like being set up where you have a credit profile with the credit reporting agencies for the business. And then there's steps where we help you to actually set up business accounts. But it's so critical to emphasize it. As one of the takeaways, just remember that it's important to emphasize to separate the personal credit from the business credit and to keep them from being commingled, to be in a position where you can obtain the lines of credit that you need to weather the perfect storm that's coming, but also just to be in a position of growing their practice and even acquisition of practices. So with that, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I guess we're going to move forward and field some questions.
All right, Louie, kick it off.
So I really enjoyed today's presentation, very informative, as always. Quick question for Rebecca and for Monika. There's a vote today up in Washington. Do you think that ICD-10 will get delayed with that vote? And what are you sensing with the providers? Do they want to delay or do they want it to go forward?
I don't think it'll be delayed. I think it's pushing through. That's just a personal opinion. And from everyone I've talked with in the industry, that's the consensus, that it's not going to be delayed. The providers, of course, are not so much on board with it, you know. Let's hold it off because it does have the implication to cause many delays in reimbursement, and the timing is off. So I think that's what we're looking at.
Question for Monika is this a myth or fact about medical bills? If you don't pay them on time, do they lower your credit score, or are they viewed differently when they're medical?
Only if those medical bills ended up in collection, they score. So until it gets into the collection company or to the collection department of the hospital, it really doesn't influence you at all. But as soon as it was marked as a collection, it starts to influence your credit. And you fight it differently if it's with the hospital or with a collection company. Just FYI, because the law is totally different in both cases.
Hi, this is for Rebecca. Rebecca, I've been to a few doctors now who give me websites where I go and rate the doctor. Is that going to be directly reflected to stage 2? Where does that come in, the measurement for rating the physician?
We are going to see a big influx in that as far as rating the doctor. There are sites now currently where doctors are being rated by patients. That is definitely going to impact down the road. I don't know if we'll see as much in stage 2 as we will in the later stages, but that is actually a big part of the influence that the doctor's going to have, you know, in bringing about a value-based, and we're hearing value-based model that we're moving to. What we're really trying to do is lower the cost of healthcare and bring about a value for the patient. So making a win-win situation is the perfect combination for sustaining and thriving today.
I'm going to put out a question to you. I'd like to know what the equipment leasing effect is on a doctor's practice. At one particular time, and I'm going to say 30, 40 years ago, they would say if a doctor came out of college, he was worth so much money in earning potential, they got approved right away. And of course, 10 years ago, we saw a dramatic shift that they weren't being approved right away. So how does equipment leasing work for these professionals and the providers, and how does it affect their score ultimately?
That's a good question. Regarding equipment leasing, there are a number of different types of programs available for equipment leasing. Some of them are a lot more stringent than others. For the most part, though, the lenders who provide equipment leasing, they're looking at the personal credit scores for the doctors. And they also will pull the business credit for the doctors. So we're seeing where doctors are really challenged, though, in getting equipment leasing because their personal credit scores are suffering. A lot of them have gone through some personal issues, divorce, or medical issues and things of that nature, so their personal credit scores are down, and they haven't built the business credit up to be able to compensate for that. But if they have an equipment leasing program and they pay on time, it can help the personal credit scores.
Other questions? Dan, hang on a second. Dan O'Connell.
Yes, I wanted to ask Rebecca because I was intrigued when you talked about the potential movement for some people to search for multi-specialty groups. And I know that may take some time to explore and kind of engender a relationship. But I wonder why in the medical profession there's not a lot of cooperation or networking unless they're within the hospital context for people to cooperate between each other. Do you see any trend that way as a starter or no?
I think we're seeing it a lot with the ACOs, but on an individual consolidation basis. Doctors know other doctors, of course. It's their circle of friends, if you will. And being able to join forces is a good move if that's good for the individual. I think it's an individual decision if they want to merge because there's a lot of headaches that come with that as well as the benefits. So making good connections, being able to refer to each other, and having everything in one place, what you're going to see is these medical conglomerates, for lack of a better term, where actually you can go to one facility and get everything you need, every specialty basically. So I think we're going to see more of that as the situations move us toward those types of arrangements. That's a good word.
All right, thank you. And I've got a question over here. Give me a moment.
For any of you can, and all of you can answer. Years ago, in this particular area, I remember the big groups, like the Cigna centers and the PQRS centers and those kind of facilities. And it seems like we've gone through waxing and waning with medical practices. They merge, they break away, they're consolidating. The PQRS centers went away, the Cigna centers went away, and it seems like there's, jungle drums that's the best way to go. Times were different 20 years ago, obviously, but what makes more accepting that now versus delivery when they were in place?
I don't know, you guys.
Go ahead. It's your specialty.
Oh, yes, stumped them. Nah.
I don't know that it's more accepting as it is a necessary need to stay afloat. I think we're beginning to feel what's happening. Now where it will stay, there are trends every so many years like you're talking about. And I think there's going to be merging, and then it's going to go back to, the way it was, just like we do with our buying sense. We change the way we're buying. I think we're seeing these trends happening in healthcare today more frequently.
I will say this also. In most industries, there's cycles, business cycles. And the business cycles usually follow the economic cycles of supply and demand. So when you see changes in the industry, there's contracting, and then there's expanding. So you see consolidation, and you see people expand. And a lot of times it follows the economic cycles, which have to do with supply and demand, and changing regulation. That's a huge factor. When you start seeing the regulation change, increase in regulation, then you start seeing the contraction. And when you see loosening of the regulations, then you see the expansion again. I've seen that in other industries, and I'm sure medical is probably not exempt from that.
Also, the establishment of insurance companies opening their own medical centers, like Care Plus for one example. And I just heard yesterday that Blue Cross Blue Shield is opening up a center in Winter Park, where the new construction is going on 1792. Are they're focusing, I mean, I'm having a hard time getting my head wrapped around directing only Blue Cross individuals are going to go to the Blue Cross Center. Are they just looking to keep their costs down in their market, or are we going to have a Blue Cross Center and an Aetna Center, and how does that save cost? I mean, you're rendering the same services at Aetna and Blue Cross and Cigna and PruCare and all the other insurance companies all over town. I just don't see that as any kind of a cost savings.
One of the clients that we work with is a large healthcare system in Michigan, one of the largest. And I've had an opportunity to talk to COO and talk about what's coming and what change do they expect in healthcare as a result of the regulation changes that are taking place in the industry. And one of the concerns that they have is that with the influx of candidates that are going to have access to health care, they are not prepared or don't know how they're going to handle the volume, was his response. They haven't had the facilities in place to be able to accommodate it. They're going to have to change how they do practice management. They're going to have to change their processes, and they have to get very creative in how they're going to be able to do that profitably. And they're concerned about that. I suspect that with some of the influx of additional patients into the system, I think they see it as an opportunity. And again, with the changing of regulations, that affects expansion and contraction in the industry and how you do things. That would be my guess.
From the personal credit point of view, when I see the doctors, the majority of them are joining some of these bigger groups because they are under a lot of stress, they are scared, or they do not have the opportunity to extend their providing all what is needed, so extend their business. And sometimes they join these groups because for a salary they can go in and everybody can take care of the rest of the problems. So that's from the personal credit point of view.
Well, what do you think? More members? Yes? Great presentation today. My thanks to Rebecca Morehead. Rebecca, before I let you go, how often is your radio show on? Is that a monthly or a weekly?
Every Wednesday at 4:30 Eastern.
Okay, so you got to look out for this radio program. Go to Rebecca's website. It was a terrific program. Let's also thank Monika Nagy. Thank you. Thank you. And in closing, Reney DuBose. Thank you.